Story 1. Requiring a process to cancel an ongoing service that is more complicated than the process to start that service. Windows updates reinstalling or re-enabling features I explicitly removed or disabled, while rebooting my computer without my permission as if Microsoft owns it, not me. Stock trading by people with the power to make laws concerning those stocks. Story 2. Buying all the homes in a low-income neighborhood to block others from ownership, then charging rent triple the local average, is exploitation disguised as investment, but it is not currently illegal. Story 3. Lifelong politicians. As our society evolves, we should have politicians with fresh perspectives making decisions. We do not need people who have been doing it for decades because, at that point, they become jaded or they do not focus on what benefits all people. Maybe set term limits where you can only keep your position or be involved in politics for a certain number of years or terms. Story 4. Adobe is lying about my Photoshop password being invalid. We paid almost $1,000 for this program, but now they do not want me to own anything. They want me to rent it for $30 per month indefinitely. The online version is unsatisfactory. Story 5. Health insurance companies are changing what is covered outside of open enrollment dates. My wife's insurance just decided to stop covering her medicine, which was covered for years. The cost went from $10 per month to $1,300 per month. Luckily, this is a medicine she does not need to live, but it does help her quality of life and other health issues. She has been without it for a few months now. Story 6. Those super bright, blinding headlights. Cannot see well. I am glad I do not drive because that is bad enough as a passenger. Story 7. Small gripe I know, but advertising applications without clearly disclosing the price. Free to download does not mean free to use. I have downloaded and immediately deleted so many applications after discovering they are not actually free. Story 8. Companies being able to take away products they sold you or dictating what you can do with them is unacceptable. John Deere can go away. Story 9. If you watch things on your phone or listen to music without headphones, it is like a day in the pillory, the wooden device where people were punished by having rotten eggs and tomatoes thrown at them while they reflect on their actions. Story 10. Ghost job listings. I would make it so that a company caught posting ghost job listings would have to pay a fine of 0.01% of the total company worth per ghost job listing per day. If a listing is found to be a ghost job, the fine would apply retroactively for either 60 days or from the date the false listing was first published, whichever is shorter. I believe such measures would ensure that fake or ghost job listings disappear entirely, which would benefit those actually looking for work. Story 11. Bad dog owners who do not train their dogs, do not clean up after them, bring them to places where dogs are prohibited, and allow them to defecate on the floor, do not pay attention to their dog's location during walks, causing their dog to block the entire sidewalk, and let their dogs run up to people and jump on them. Story 12. Making a profit from healthcare, prisons, or education is inappropriate. Employees in all three sectors should be well compensated, but corporations and executives should not earn millions in profit. Story 13. Stock market manipulation. Laws against stock market manipulation should have no loopholes, and enforcement should be strong and independent. Story 14. That is a tough one because I am torn between two things. Making products intentionally break or become outdated just to force new purchases is wasteful, unethical, and environmentally harmful. Alternatively, price gouging on essential goods, whether it is insulin, housing, or basic groceries, profiting unfairly from people's necessities during crises or due to monopoly power should be criminal. Story 15. Advertising. No more spam calls. No more unsolicited emails. No more ads on every page or video, and no clever ways to force people to see them. No more commercial breaks. No more today's video is sponsored by. No more click like to subscribe. Ban it all. Make it a crime. Enforce the ban. Help create a distraction-free world. Story 16. All vehicles over a certain height must have mud flaps behind the rearmost wheels. I just paid almost $1,000 yesterday for a brand new windshield and noticed a brand new crack in it within 20 seconds of entering the freeway. I am tired of paying money to account for the ambivalence or outright negligence of other people. Story 17. Denying or delaying any medical care deemed appropriate by the treating physicians by an insurance company. Story 18. I think committing war crimes should be illegal to the extent that war criminals actually face prosecution, and journalists should be treated like heroes for reporting facts about crimes committed by politicians. Unfortunately, we currently only imprison journalists in the United Kingdom. Story 19. Public figures spreading conspiracy theories in public. This is not a free speech issue. You are not free to yell fire in a crowded theater. That is illegal too. Story 20. Indoor smoking in a public place. Overdraft fees that are larger than the overdraft amount. How is that legal? Story 21. Supermarkets and stores throw away food that they can legally donate but choose not to. Story 22. Not owning things you pay your hard-earned money for should be illegal. Go away with these licenses you can revoke for any reason. Why should you charge full price for access that you can limit? Have two versions, the full ownership version and the licensed version. Story 23. Lying to the public. Including punitive legal damages, for example, if you made $1, you will be required to pay $3 or manslaughter charges for lies that lead to deaths. Story 24. Data farming on social media. Fake mobile game advertisements make me very angry. I do not even play those games, but the idea that there are companies blatantly deceiving people makes me sick. The worst part is that the largest social media platforms allow this to continue. Telemarketing. Story 25. Hedge funds are able to buy a company and run it into the ground to make a profit. Rest in peace, Joanne's and Red Lobster. Story 26. Out-of-country landlords would have 20 days to sell their property before it is seized and sold, with preference given to apartment dwellers. Owning more than 3 houses, condominiums, or duplexes is restricted. Properties that are not apartment buildings cannot be hoarded. Apartment buildings clustered together in one area count as one property, and ownership is limited to 5 such properties. Congress members and their families owning stock must be addressed. Lobbying practices require reform. Church tax exemptions need review. Law enforcement officers wearing face masks should be regulated. Executive pay should be capped at 15 times the lowest paid employee's previous year's income. Fiduciary duty should include stock market considerations, and in some states, if parents cannot afford late-life care, their children must pay the bills. Many families are financially devastated when a parent falls ill and expenses are passed on to the children. Charging more than 3% annual percentage rate is problematic. Planned obsolescence should be eliminated. Prison labor in its current state requires reevaluation. Schools focusing excessively on standardized testing, intensified by policies like No Child Left Behind, undermines education quality. Story 27. Not illegal per se, but all political donations need to be tied to a social security number, green card, visa, or equivalent. Companies should not be allowed to donate to political campaigns. Lobbying may need more limits as well, not banned but definitely changed. Story 28. To offer a lower price or a coupon on a product that requires the customer to provide identifying information to receive the discount, such as a store loyalty card, app, or email address at the register. Story 29. Automated service. I need to speak to someone on the phone right now. Stop giving me 50 options to choose from. Story 30. People over age 75 driving without passing a cognitive exam 4 times a year. The new extremely bright car lights. Story 31. Super PACs. Lobbying. States hiring police or law enforcement officers not registered in the federal database, without undergoing federal background checks or meeting mandatory education requirements. Medication price gouging. Medical insurance companies denying claims without review by a registered physician. Story 32. Donating to political candidates in other states is unnecessary. There is no reason for someone in California to donate to a candidate for governor in Virginia. Story 33. A grown adult seducing a 16-year-old. The age of consent here is too low. This is not to say we should eliminate the Romeo and Juliet laws that prevent criminalizing teenagers having sex with each other. However, A 45-year-old has no business engaging in a relationship with a high school student who still needs to ask permission at school to go to the bathroom. Story 34. Junk mail sent to my mailbox. What a huge waste of resources for absolutely nothing meaningful to be gained. Story 35. Not getting your semi-socially acceptable behavior under control when you have a family. My father's behavior was narcissistic personality disorder, drinking, and affairs. And yes, those things are tolerated to some degree, unfortunately. But children do not have coping tools for that kind of chaos. They just internalize it, distort it, and grow up broken in new and challenging ways. Story 36. If a politician or any close friend of theirs or family member in grade 2 or 3 is accused of any form of corruption, they are not allowed to hold any public office for life. Also, if you have been accused of any form of corruption, you are not allowed to hold such a position. I live in a country where I cannot understand how people vote for the same corrupt and ignorant individuals for the last 30 years. They are always in the news, whether it is them, their spouses, children, siblings, or close friends involved in some kind of scandal, influence trafficking, or deterioration of various kinds. Story 37. Barring access to repair documents, replacement parts, and tools or software needed to fix things. Also, requiring the use of specific brands of parts, for example, a General Electric breaker box stating, "Only use General Electric breakers." Fun fact, those warranty void if removed stickers are illegal in the United States. And if you see one, you should report it to the Federal Trade Commission. Story 38. Signing executive orders that violate the Constitution, for starters, since apparently it needs to be said. Legislators being allowed to participate in the stock market. Scalping products. We used to require a license for people to sell goods. Now it seems they can just buy everything off a shelf and resell it online without needing a license, which incentivizes unethical practices and scamming. This likely bypasses various retail laws and regulations, but because the sales are online, it ends up in a gray area instead of being illegal. There should be limits on how much residential land or housing a single person or corporation is allowed to own. We have laws to help prevent monopolies in the marketplace, but land is a special type of resource. Land is finite, so we need stricter anti-monopoly regulations surrounding residential land to protect the market from exploitation by a few. Story 39. Ownership of single-family homes by non-human entities is prohibited. The only exception is that a bank may hold the title while a mortgage is active. Story 40. Hold a position of power that corresponds to your specialization. For example, the Minister of Health must be a licensed medical professional and have held their professional position as a doctor with the utmost professionalism to be considered for the role. The ministerial job must match the area of specialization. No more lawyers, accountants, or relatives of politicians taking over roles outside their expertise. Story 41. Bringing up religion during government work is penalized, and your words may be removed, with repeat offenders likely to lose their positions on committees or in places of authority. The separation of church and state does not seem to be taken seriously anymore. It has been weakened. Lawmakers frequently mention religion as reasons for their votes. At this rate, I would prefer state atheism, but without the government forcing people to convert or deconvert. They should use reason and logic in government and stop basing legislation on religious ideas. If they have serious religious convictions, they should either avoid jobs that conflict with those convictions or provide evidence from their holy scriptures to support claims such as, vaccines are bad. Story 42. Offenders would be sent to re-education camps and required to watch reruns of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood until they demonstrated sustained civility. Story 43. Healthcare and insurance for the legislative, judicial, and executive branches of government beyond the Affordable Care Act. Perhaps then they would take meaningful action. Story 44. Companies buying homes, marking up prices to make more money, suing for damages caused if you are committing a crime such as squatting. Story 45. Money in politics. Give each candidate equal free airtime. Otherwise, they must fund their own campaigns. Story 46. Debt consolidators. They are often ineffective and frequently try to get your account into collections because they believe they can secure a better deal for you that way. Occasionally, they succeed, but only after you have paid them for several months of service. You have the same settlement options they do. They do not receive special treatment. Their role is essentially to make the call on your behalf. Story 47. Politicians make more money than the average citizen of their country or region, except in extreme cases of mass poverty. They should not receive anything deemed a luxury. They should live only as well as their policies allow others to live. Story 48. Working for very little money while serving a prison sentence. Much wealth has been made in the manufacturing sector through the labor of individuals who are essentially treated like slaves, even if people do not want to acknowledge it. I do not disagree that some people deserve to be locked up for their actions. However, the majority need rehabilitation and an opportunity. Story 49. Giving bonuses to executives when you are billions in debt and have just received a government relief loan. Looking at you, Thames Water. Story 50. Advertisements. My life here is very short. Advertising companies should be paying me for the amount of my life they waste. Story 51. Interest rates being more than 1 or 2%. I understand you want to make some money on loaning money, but any more than that is just criminal. Story 52. Riding bicycles on roadways without insurance, riding 2, 3, or 4 abreast on road bikes, and expecting drivers to yield to you is irresponsible. Story 53. Death penalty for misleading advertising. I cannot take it anymore. If it were legal, I would expose the marketing team and punish them severely. Story 54. Owning more houses than 2 plus N, where N is the number of family members that live in the house at least 8 months a year. You should be allowed to have your home, a cabin, a second place. You alone are allowed to spend a few months a year, 4 to 5 months maximum, and it is not allowed to be rented out. Homes for your children, brothers, and immediate family members who live there primarily throughout the year. That's it. No private or corporate rentals for apartments. All should be government-controlled. This system seemed like a good idea a few decades ago, but greed has ruined it, and now too many people cannot afford to own a home, only rent. Therefore, this system needs to be abolished. Story 55. Spitting on the ground or anywhere people walk in public is disrespectful. The first time I yelled at a random teenager was when the kid spat on the metro window and did not understand why that was a problem. Story 56. Driving slow in the left lane is problematic. It is called the passing lane for one very specific reason. This behavior is already illegal. Do not get upset when I pass you on the right lane. I am trying to send you a message. Story 57. If you are a government official, labor union official, or human resources employee, ignoring discrimination will be punished with the same penalty as the actual discrimination, including payment of damages to the affected person. Story 58. Displaying or wearing political campaign merchandise after an election has finished is discouraged on both sides. No Clinton or Gore bumper stickers, no Make America Great Again hats. Politicians should be required to wear racing-style jumpsuits that display all their donors and must be themed for their largest donor to provide quick visual transparency. Story 59. One-time disposable vapes are problematic as they are. However, whoever came up with the idea of combining them with lithium-ion batteries for one-time use should be held accountable, in my opinion. The impact on the environment is severe, not to mention the hazard of people throwing them into regular waste. In general, there should be a law requiring companies to develop a disposal plan for their products before being allowed to bring them to market. Story 60. Billionaires. No single person needs more than $5 million. Above that, tax rates should increase significantly. Story 61. Overinflation. Prices of goods are now too high, and our wages do not even cover them. People are drowning in debt while wealthy individuals continue profiting from our struggles. Story 62. Owning property as an investment comes at the expense of lower and middle-income people who now cannot afford to buy. High fructose corn syrup and junk food in general contribute to health problems. Treats are acceptable, but stores and manufacturers need to take responsibility for their direct role in the obesity crisis. Story 63. Homeowners associations are organizations that manage and regulate residential communities. Story 64. Child beauty pageants. That type of beauty should not be ascribed to children. The origins are likely harmful in nature, and if you support them, it is likely because you were raised in that culture and know no different. They are inappropriate and should not be tolerated as a hobby or resume filler. Story 65. Sports journalists and media spreading false rumors for cheap clicks. I would also require them to identify the sources of their information, as they are no longer allowed to simply say sources. Story 66. Politicians having a second job must ensure they declare all investments above a certain value, or if the total combined investment reaches a threshold. Story 67. The 7-hydroxy compound they are selling everywhere now needs to come with a label warning of its addictive properties and the possibility of overdose. It is many times stronger than morphine, completely unregulated, and highly addictive. Story 68. Buying the loyalty of politicians so that they make decisions against the interests of their people and then having the media lie about it. Story 69. Big pharmaceutical advertising. The problem that is the prison industrial complex. Inaction on climate change. Story 70. Receiving any gifts or money directly or indirectly by yourself, family, or business from any source other than the government during and 25 years after holding an elected position is prohibited. Discovery of such actions would result in a retroactive penalty of life imprisonment for the elected official and contributor, along with forfeiture of all assets for both parties. Public service ought not to enrich the elected. Story 71. Endless patents and intellectual property rights. The reason companies can get away with subscription service heated seats and extremely high drug prices is that competing with them is against the law. Story 72. Advertising that is interruptive or disruptive in any way cannot cover or pause content. Gotcha or loot boxes, even if you cannot buy them, are not allowed. Games vaulting or removing official content, or making it impossible to play their game, is prohibited. Job listings that do not actually exist are not permitted. Job listings must be responded to, probably within 15 days. Any advertising of medicine or medical procedures is not allowed. Only medical professionals should advise you on what medicine to take. Story 73. Career politicians and public officials participating in the stock market outside of pensions and retirement accounts and investment property have church tax exemption status. Those are just my main concerns. Story 74. An online sportsbook should not be able to lower your bet just because you win. They also accept nearly unlimited bets from those who lose. Story 75. Deciding to pay a fine because it is less costly in the end than rectifying the behavior that resulted in the violation. It should be illegal for the punishment of a crime to be less burdensome than complying with the law in the first place. Story 76. Smoking and vaping outside hospital entrances is prohibited. Welcome to our smoke-free hospital, the signs proudly proclaim. Bah! Story 77. Cell phones before the age of 12. Access to games with significant loot box mechanics before the age of 18. Ability to create and access social media accounts before the age of 12. Honestly, I am not sure of the exact ages, but these things are ruinous to our society and need to stop. Story 78. Any scam that targets the vulnerable, especially the elderly. Not just talking about text and email scams, but also the megachurches that demand money so the pastor can buy a new jet. It is theft under the guise of religion. Story 79. Discriminating against people based on sexual orientation or gender identity is wrong. There are currently no laws against that where I live. Moreover, they are trying to do the opposite by making behavior against gender illegal, which is so subjective that it could lead to people being jailed for anything. But salivary is cold. Story 80. Smoking. If you are older and already addicted, your doctor can exempt you, but you need to go to a special pharmacy to get the medication. No one new can get exempt or legally use it if born after 2010. Many people are harming themselves with that poison, while others are profiting from it. Story 81. Talking on speakerphone in public or listening to your phone, tablet, or other device in public without headphones or earbuds. Story 82. Retail pharmacy prices. Medicine is virtually the only thing in America that is intentionally separate from global market conditions. Medications that cost as much as $20,000 without insurance here have a zero insurance cash price of a few $100s in other countries. The only reason to keep United States drug prices separate is greed. If medicine in the United States were subject to global market prices, nobody would need insurance. Story 83. Major telephone carriers are to become publicly traded companies. They know they are a necessity to society, yet they try to take every possible dime from their customers. Story 84. If we eliminate the lobbying industry, also known as special interest groups in Washington, D.C., we could resolve most of the problems mentioned above. Story 85. After the issues involving Diddy and Epstein, I believe the law should be enforced more strictly, and efforts to crack down on bribery should be increased. Ignoring obvious evidence is unacceptable. Internal affairs need to improve, and punishments for favoring the wealthy in the justice system should be significantly harsher. It should be illegal to provide different treatment in the justice system based on socioeconomic status. An image circulated showing Luigi Mangione, who allegedly killed a CEO, with what appeared to be the entire police force escorting him. In contrast, a man who committed multiple murders and rapes had only 2 guards because his victims were low profile. This disparity is especially troubling when the wealthy individual involved behaves poorly. Story 86. Mid-contract price increases. There should be one price for the entire duration of the contract or service usage. Story 87. Cheating in any kind of sport or game, or anything competitive, will result in jail time if there is strong evidence. Story 88. Child marriage. It does not matter if the parents consent. The line in the sand should be 18 years old. Period. Story 89. Lobbying, stock buybacks, paying less than a living wage, private insurance, private ownership of the means of production. Story 90. Having to pay the company from which you purchased a console monthly to play the game you bought for their console online. Story 91. Politicians and anyone running for or seeking to be hired for public office should not lie about anything related to the job, legislation, rules, or policies. Story 92. Government corruption. Too many politicians in my country get away with anything because of some immunity. Story 93. Doorbells on television commercials because of dogs. Sirens on radio commercials because of safety. Service fees on tickets. I could really go all day. Story 94. Allowing more than one thing to be included in a bill that passes through the government. Do you want to reallocate funds for a specific department? One bill. Do you want to enact sweeping changes across multiple departments, defund sections of unrelated departments, or place tax credits for certain business types? Now, one bill for each. I am tired of things being snuck into 900-plus page bills because no one wants or has the capacity to read them. Story 95. Licking your finger before handing a paper to someone. I don't care if you slobber all over your own property, but don't lick other people's papers. Story 96. Parents using their children against each other during messy divorces. It is illegal now, but it is difficult to prove intent. As a result, some cases drag on for years and cause people to be miserable. Story 97. Nothing would be legal until age 23, including military service, driving, alcohol consumption, voting, and obtaining a marriage license. Anything under 23 would be illegal. Story 98. Advertisements overall, but advertisements for medication are more specific. We are the only nation in the world that has medication advertisements. I hope no other country starts to do it. Story 99. Insurance, especially car insurance, is expensive and often does not cover everything, if anything at all. Story 100. Alcohol. Yes, I understand it can be enjoyable, but personally, I would prefer to prevent the thousands of children and adults who have been killed because of it. Story 101. Talking on speakerphone at full volume in a store or restaurant is inconsiderate. Please put the phone to your ear. Nobody wants to hear your private conversations. Story 102. Being a landlord is pure evil parasitism, and anyone who participates in it will face consequences. Story 103. Endless insurance payments with no guarantee of coverage. It is absurd that insurance is an endless money pit, And when most people need it, they get denied coverage. If you do not use your insurance for a year, insurance companies should have to pay it back. No company should be able to siphon your bank account endlessly and not provide anything in return. Story 104. Manufacturers who add fake pockets to clothing are the actual spawn of the devil. Story 105. Being wealthy above $1 million means that any accumulated wealth beyond that amount goes back into funding the greater good, such as schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. Story 106. Alcohol should not impair judgment, yet people often believe they are okay to drive when they are not. They show no remorse because they never cared before they were drunk. Story 107. Alcohol and cigarettes are harmful. Having patients who struggle with alcohol addiction and smoking can be challenging. Story 108. Parents dragging their children into their marital issues instead of growing up and handling them alone. Adopted child here feeling like an accomplice to something I did not ask for. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.